guys. Welcome back to the Big Intentions podcast. I'm your host, Iralyn. I'm excited for today's podcast episode. I got great response on my first podcast episode, so thank you guys so much for listening. And I'm so excited to keep going with this journey. So we're going to be talking about why habits and routines are important and how they can set you up for success and allow you to become the best version of yourself in today's podcast episode. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, why don't you leave me a 5-star review and rating? I would so appreciate that, and we can get this pod in other people's ears. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and I would love to have you guys along for the journey. So yeah, just some housekeeping things there, but thanks so much for listening to the first episode of the podcast last week, and you're going to be in for a treat today. I'm going to be talking about all things habits, and it's going to be a great episode. So let's just go ahead and dive into this segment. So living out loud. I had a super chill weekend. I went to a few spin classes. That's always a good time. I started rereading The Hunger Games though, and let me tell you, I forgot how good these books were. Like, they're very well written. I read them in like middle school and I'm so obsessed. And my book club, basically what we're doing is reading the prequel that came out, and then we're going to hopefully go watch the Hunger Games like prequel that's coming out in November, I think. So my grand idea was, that sounds like the perfect opportunity to reread all of the books. And then after I like read one book, I'll watch the movie that correlates to it. So we're super excited for that. In other weekend things, I started a 1,000 piece puzzle. And puzzling is really a great form of therapy, relaxation, for me at least. I mean, some people that might really stress you out, but I like it. I like using my brain. It feels productive. It's relaxing, but it feels like I'm doing something. So that's why I like puzzling. So highly recommend puzzles if you're into that. So that's kind of like a little bit about my weekend, what I got up to, and yeah, just catching you guys up on that. So next segment is words to live by, and here, this quote, I like find all my quotes on Pinterest. Basically, I just look up like whatever I'm trying to find a good quote for. Like for this one, I think I looked up change quotes, or you can look up change aesthetic. I don't know. Pinterest is a great place to find anything you're looking for though. It's a great search engine, honestly. So words to live by. This quote is by Max Dupree. No idea who that is, but it goes, "We cannot become what we want by remaining what we are." And this is a great overview of what we're going to be discussing in today's podcast episode. So I love the idea that we're in charge of our lives, and we usually... Sorry, putting my phone on Do Not Disturb because I do not want a text to like pop up right now. So really, I think this quote is a great overview of what we're going to be discussing in today's podcast episode. And I love the idea that we are in charge of our lives and we're usually our own biggest roadblock. And sometimes, sure, there might be detours or bumps in the road or other passengers along the way that try to pull you over or whatever it might be. But ultimately, you're the one putting your foot on the pedal, on the gas. You aren't going to go anywhere unless you put your foot on that pedal. And I really think if you have this mindset of I am capable, I can do anything I want, I am the only thing holding myself back, you really can push past your limits and go even further than you imagined if you have that in mind. So that's my quote, words to live by this week. Just want you guys to keep that in mind when you're going throughout your day-to-day lives. I think it's a great quote. We cannot become what we want by remaining what we are. And that is so true. So in this episode, really want to dive into some of the tools and framework to be more in control of your life and controlling the chaos, really living up to your full potential. So that's what we're going to discuss in today's episode. But before that, let's get into the next segment, which is intentional living. So checking in from last week's intentions, which my intentions I set last week were to be more present and in the moment. And I do feel like I've done a better job at that within the last week. I've really been zoning in on the task at hand and fully immersing and immersing myself in that task and really just taking on the different actions and things at hand and being fully in it and present, which I think, one, produces better work, better results come from that when you're fully engaged in something. And so I would say that that would be something that I actually did keep in mind during the week, and I felt like there was an improvement in that area. So that was awesome. And then for this week's intention, it's a little more lighthearted, but I want to go thrifting. I really want to curate a fun wardrobe for the summer. I have some upcoming trips planned, and I really just want to feel my best and look my best. And so I've really been working on my health and nutrition goals, and seeing the results of that is something that I'm like, finally, like, I love that we're actually seeing the results. And that, what that looks like is all of my pants are too big, all my shorts too loose. Nothing fits. Everything is baggy. And baggy is in, but not when you're like, oh my gosh, my pants are literally on the ground. Throwback to that song, if you guys remember, Pants on the Ground. I feel like that was like an American Idol thing. Throwback to American Idol. Do they even still do it? Like, I don't know. But anyways, so none of my clothes really fit. So that's kind of a problem when it comes to like feeling your best if things are just falling off your body, which, like, obviously this is a great problem to have, but I really do want to go and get some clothes that fit, especially for summer, because I want to wear some shorts and like have a good time, feel good, look good, whatever, especially for the trips. So basically that is my intention, is to go thrifting. I don't like want to buy a whole new wardrobe. I mean, I would love to, but I want to kind of be more conscious about what I'm actually buying pieces that are staples and can hold me over for the summer. So, because I don't know, obviously I don't want to buy like brand new clothes and then keep having them be baggy or whatever, you know what I mean? So whatever. Not trying to be triggering in this and talk about like weight or anything like that. Not that I think anybody listening to this would probably be triggered by that. But anyways, I'm just trying to, keep it light. But basically that is kind of my intention. Just find some fun pieces for the summer. So without further ado, let's just get right into this week's topic for the podcast. You can see by the title, we're going to be talking, and I've already kind of mentioned it, we're going to be talking about controlled chaos. Basically implementing routines and habits and how they have had the biggest impact on my life and have changed the way that I live, the way that I feel, and the positive results that I've achieved from implementing routines and habits into my life. So, habits and routines, to me, they go hand in hand. And I saw this Pinterest quote, again, me loving Pinterest, it's fine, that said, you can't form a habit if it doesn't have a routine to stick to. Love that. I think that's a great kind of depiction of how habits and routines are related. And we'll get into a deeper dive on habits and habit loops and things like that within this episode. But really, I want to share with you guys the why and the intention. That's kind of the focus of today's podcast episode. We can go into more in-depth, like what more specific habits that changed my life in another episode, but kind of just setting the framework for habits and routines. So I want to share with you all my experience with habits and how I went from hating routine and feeling like there was no freedom that I could expel from a routine. I felt very rigid and structured. And I went from that to actually embracing routine and structuring different aspects of my life and how that's compounded. And it actually has made a huge difference in the way that I feel, in the results of the different habits I've created. I just think that it really has allowed me to become a better, fuller version of myself by having and sticking to habits and routines. So I would say this all started about a year ago, but I've really fully embraced it within the past 6 months or so. And I feel like I've excelled and been more consistent than I have in my whole life. That's something like I always would start something and just nothing really ever stuck. And I know that if you are consistent, that is when you actually see your hard work starting to pay off. When you're consistent week after week, day after day, whatever it might be, whenever you stick to things that will get you to that end goal, you have to be consistent in that. So I feel like previously in college and, even a lot of post-grad, I loved the flexibility and free time that was available to me, but I never felt like I was fully utilizing my time and energy in an efficient manner. And, I would see people talk about their routines or like watch like morning routine videos, all the things that people promote. And it really only seemed like something that could be achieved or was realistic for someone who was type A, super organized, or someone who was really rigid and like basically had no personality. I was like, literally, that's the opposite of me. I don't think that I could fully embrace and enjoy living in such a routine, structured lifestyle. But I feel like that I am proof that I'm someone who's more chaotic, I'm more impulsive, and I'm definitely someone who loves independence and freedom. And to me, I feel like you can derive that from a routine when you embrace it and structure it to be something that fits you and your goals and will help you to achieve the highest version of yourself. I definitely do believe that anyone can basically implement habits and routines and become the highest version of themselves. Even if you are super chaotic and just feel very disheveled, I think structure and routine is good for you. I actually do believe that. And I do not think I would have believed that like 2 years ago if you told me like, yeah, you're going to have like these habits that you do every day in this routine and you're going to actually enjoy your life. Like I would have been like, no, I don't think so. But I think that whenever you reframe it and the way you look at it and you have a reason for why you're doing the things you're doing, it can really help you to achieve what you want to achieve. If you go into a routine with a predetermined or set routine that you just like found on Pinterest or, this favorite influencer you follow or whatever has this routine, I don't think if you copy someone else's routine or habits that it's really gonna stick. Because routines and habits are not one size fits all. The routine and habits that you implement in your life need to be conducive to your lifestyle and act as stepping stones to help you achieve and reach what you're headed for and what you're trying to become or achieve or whatever it might be. I think it has to align with what you want in your life. You can't just pick a random habit, like follow this Olympian's habit and routine if you want to be a writer. Those things don't really add up. Just because they're things that are productive or seem good doesn't necessarily mean it's going to lead you down the path where you ultimately want to end up. So obviously, you have to implement routines and habits that are enjoyable as well because you want something that's sustainable for your lifestyle. Because really, a habit or a goal at the end of the day, it's something that, yes, you want to get to the end goal, but the process to get there, yes, it may be hard, but you really want to work towards something that is sustainable for your life. You can't just start off with saying, I'm going to read 100 books in a year. Make it more granular. You got to start off with like, what am I going to do every day? What are the habits and routines I'm setting up in my day-to-day life to help me read and achieve my goal of reading 100 books or whatever it might be? You really kind of have to start on that small level to build up to that end goal. So there really needs to be a purpose and intention behind the habits and routines that you implement. For example, drinking 90 ounces of water. Yes, that's something that we know is beneficial to our health and people say to do it. But why? You really have to understand and ask yourself the why behind your habits and routines. So for me, okay, drinking water makes me feel hydrated. It makes me feel my best. It allows me to perform better in the gym. It allows me to have more energy. It sustains me throughout the day. And I think having a reason and an intention behind these things will give you more fuel and discipline to stick with these habits and routines that you've created because you have a reason to. There's purpose behind the habits and routines. It's not just to say, yes, I did this thing and check it off a list. It's a stepping stone to becoming your highest self. It's a stepping stone to achieving that goal or dream that you have. So Ed Milet talks about building self-confidence, and the way to build it is by keeping promises that you make to yourself. So how would you expect others to be able to depend on you if you can't even keep the promises that you make yourself? And I think this is a great inspiration and reason to build and implement habits and routines is because really you're building your self-confidence when you keep those promises and uphold those promises to yourself. And building your self-confidence is really key to accomplishing things. If you believe you can, you will accomplish greatness. If you have proof that you are capable of maintaining a certain level of excellence in your day-to-day, if you have that proof that every day I read 10 pages of nonfiction, I do my daily devotional. If you have proof, you're building up evidence to yourself that you can maintain this certain level of excellence every day, then you're going to begin to build that confidence that can fuel you to do even more with your life and be proof that, okay, I do these things every day. That's easy. Okay, let's level it up. Let me do this thing. Let me implement this new habit that's going to help me achieve this thing that's higher and bigger than I dreamed that I could have. That self-confidence is key and a foundational level to becoming that higher version of yourself. So now that we kind of have a little bit of a background on why routines and habits are important, now let's kind of talk about some tangible steps and ways to create and stick to these habits and routines that you're going to create and implement in your life. So first of all, I highly recommend the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. I've read this book and I've gained so much value and deeper level of understanding from the different explanations and the science behind habits and habit formation and habit loop and all these different framework and tools that he uses and talks about throughout the book. He really just does a good deep dive on these things and makes it really easy to comprehend and understand and tangible ways to implement things into your life, to break habits, bad habits, to implement good habits. So basically, this is a regurgitation of his book. I really enjoyed that book. And I think if you really want to get into the why and how to do and implement habits, you don't need to read the book, but at least listen to a podcast that James Clear has been on, because he basically just does high level, explains the book. But if you're into reading, then I recommend this book. I think it's great. So starting off, sticking to habits and routines doesn't just come from being motivated or, willpower, the will to achieve greatness. It's really all about discipline. Even if you don't want to go to that workout class, but if you're disciplined to go, you can't let things like your mood or fleeting thoughts sway you and negatively impact you from what you really want. If you're disciplined, it doesn't matter what your mood is, you're going to go to the class. And the result at the end, that bad mood might be changed into a good mood. So you really have to focus on discipline. And to be disciplined, we have to structure our lives in a way that promotes us to make easy decisions that result in achievement and advancement towards our goals. So James Clear talks about the habit loop in his book, and it's really essential to understand in order to create good habits and to break bad habits. So there are 4 parts to a habit loop. First, you have your cue, then your craving, the response, and the reward. So the cue is going to trigger the behavior, and these are responses to stimuli that predict some type of reward. So the cue could be the smell of coffee. That's the external stimulus or stimulation that your brain is like, I smell coffee. And the second step is the craving. And so these are the motivational forces behind habits. The craving isn't the habit itself, but it's that change in state that it delivers. So cravings are linked to a desired change in your external state. So the craving is, in the coffee example, it's the alertness and the feeling that is derived from drinking a cup of coffee. So the response is the actual habit being performed, which in this case is drinking the coffee. That's our response. And finally, the reward is delivered from the response. So this is the end goal. The reward is the end goal of the habit. The cue is noticing the reward. The craving is wanting the reward. And the response is obtaining the reward. And then you have your reward. So the habit loop can be applied to both good and bad habits, and habits that you want to continue with or habits that you want to eradicate from your life. So again, highly suggest Atomic Habits, really, to get a deep dive on this. But throughout this episode, I wanted to give you some insight and how I have implemented habits to change my life. And I can do a whole episode, like I said, on habits that changed my life and give actual examples. But today I really just wanted to convey the importance of habits and routines, just to get this idea, plant a seed in your mind of why are habits important? What is the benefit of having habits and routines and structure in my life? Now that I have consistency in my life, I feel more free. I know it sounds backwards, but the structure that I've created in my life has allowed me the freedom to pursue the things I want. So I have so much more self-confidence and self-respect when I'm actually sticking to the habits and routines I've created in my life. I just feel better about myself. And becoming the highest version of myself is really only made possible through the habits that I implement in my day-to-day. Don't get me wrong, I still have fun and allow time to have fun and do things and be random, but rather than wasting the precious time I do have and wishing I was someone else or doing more, I've really just set up these structures in my life that allow me to become the version of myself that I want to be, the highest version of myself. And if you want to change something in your life, you actually have to do something about it. If you want a different result, you have to do something different. I used to wish for things to change, but not really put any effort towards making that change. I kind of just half do things like, I kind of, started working out more, but, I wasn't really fueling my body in the right way to accelerate and see results. So if I could go on and on about things that I used to wish for, but really it's so simple. This quote, I feel like really depicts it, but Albert Einstein quote, you probably heard this. It's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. If you want something different to happen, you have to do something different. You can't just keep putting in the same trying the same thing and expecting something different to happen. That's just not how that works. And that's not to say that consistency isn't key. Consistency is key, but if you're wishing for something to happen, you actually have to go out and make something happen. You have to make the change, and you have to do the things that your highest self would do. You have to create the habits and routines that allow you to become who you want to be. You have to control the chaos to fully live a life that you are proud of. And really it does sound simple, and you think, wow, like how does just doing this one thing every day really lead me to becoming my higher self? But one, you're building that self-confidence, you're building up your discipline, you're really creating structures in your life to be able to handle more difficult things and to set yourself up for success. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thanks for listening to this week's podcast. I would love to have more feedback on the podcast. I got a lot of great response from the first podcast episode, but let me know how you're liking it. If there's any topics that you want to hear, I really want this place to be a community and for people to feel safe to express themselves, to share their dreams, to encourage one another, to work towards their highest selves. So that's the purpose of the podcast, becoming our highest versions of ourselves. And each week I'm trying to inspire and encourage you guys and to, push you on towards your dreams and goals and giving you things that I've learned throughout the way that have helped me to become a higher version of myself. I don't think I'm the highest version. I don't think you can ever be the highest version. There's always room for improvement. So thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Big Intentions podcast. You can find me on YouTube at Iralyn Hunt and on Instagram at Iralyn12. All things podcast, YouTube, it's all one place. It's all under my name. So that's where you can find me. So thanks for listening to this week's episode, and I love you guys. Bye.